No, we got nothing. Joe. Welcome to the March 24th, 2025 meeting of the Wayzata Planning Commission. I hereby call the meeting to order. My name is Blake Cameron, and I am the chair of the Planning Commission. I have just a few words on how to participate in this evening's agenda. Members of the public may attend this Planning Commission meeting in person or watch and listen remotely by viewing the meeting on Channel 8 WCTV and at the city's website at www.wayzata.org/WCTV. Public comment during the public forum and/or public hearing portions of the meeting may be provided in person at the meeting, in advance, or by logging on to the Teams call and raising your hand during the public hearing. When your name is called in the meeting, you will be seen and heard in our council chambers and on the cable channel. You'll be asked to unmute, and then you may begin your comment. All public comments must include your full name and address. The city encourages comments and questions about items on the agenda, and when possible, requests that you submit them in advance by emailing publiccomment@wayzata.org, calling city staff at 952-404-5323, or mailing Wayzata City Hall at 600 Rice Street East, Wayzata, Minnesota 55391. Attention public comment. I'm going to take a real quick deviation here. Before we get to roll call, I'm going to recognize Mr. Jeff Dahl, who is the city manager for the city of Wayzata.
Thank you, Chair Cameron. Excuse me, and good evening, commissioners. Real quick, no, there's a lot of people here, but I just wanted to mention two things. One is thanks to the Planning Commission, your service, your dedication, commitment to serving your community. A lot of times it's a thankless job, but it requires a lot of thought, time, effort, and you don't get a paycheck. You're doing it because you want to do good for the community. So just real quick, thank you. Other thing I want to, it's kind of bittersweet. We're going to be saying goodbye to our city planner, Val Quarles, later this week. We're going to be thanking her and recognizing her and celebrating her next endeavor. We're going to do that later this week. But tonight I wanted to officially introduce you to Alex Sharp. Alex Sharp is our new community development director. We have searched high and low for Alex. We took our time, but we got our person. So we're really happy to introduce Alex to the Planning Commission, the community, and we'll be introducing him to the council tomorrow. Alex comes to us from, excuse me, a tenure in Shakopee, where he worked on a lot of economic development related projects, as well as planning, and then most recently in Apple Valley, where he spent several years there in a fast growth and redeveloping city in their community development department as well. And I asked Alex to keep a little intro presentation tonight to under 30 minutes. So he'll be really brief, but just we're thrilled that he's here, and I hope everybody also will please welcome Alex Sharp to the city of Wayzata. Let's give him a round of applause. So that's all I have. I don't know if Alex, you had anything to add there? Okay. And you'll see that he's pretty sharp.
Bump.
We're done here tonight.
Thanks, Jeff. Next on the agenda is the roll call, and this is where it'll all come together. Director Sharp, can you please call roll for us?
Actually, this evening we will have Val.
Planner Quarles.
But
I'm going to pronounce everyone's name correctly so that Alex knows how to say them. Starting from Commissioner Ankeny, Commissioner Planton, Commissioner Schwalbe,
Here.
Chair Cameron,
Here.
Commissioner Severson,
Here.
Commissioner Elg,
Here.
and Commissioner Van Looy.
Here.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of tonight's meeting agenda. Do any of you have any questions or proposed changes to the agenda for this evening?
No.
All right. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I will make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, the motion passes, and the agenda is approved. Next on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Today's consent agenda consists of two items, which is the approval of the meeting minutes from March 10th and approval of the report and recommendation for approval for the fence variance at 355 Waycliff and the private street. Do any of you have any questions or comments about anything in the consent agenda? Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Motion to approve the consent agenda. Elg.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, the motion passes, and the consent agenda is approved. Next on the agenda is the public hearing items, which is, I assume the public is all here tonight. Tonight we have one item, and that is the 200 Lake Street application. Planner Quarles, could you please walk us through the staff presentation? Or the application, sorry.
I am happy to, but we're actually going to have Director Sharp start for the first couple slides, and then I'll take over from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Planner. Control the PowerPoint. Thank you. So as stated, this application is for 200 Lake Street East. There are a number of different actions, which Val will go through the complexities of in a little bit. We've got some slides that'll go through that at length. Go ahead and slip. So the site is zoned PUD for planned unit development, and you can see that on the graphic on the screen as well. The site is guided as a central business district, 20 to 30 units per acre. The aerial photo helps identify the site in the community and its proximity to the lake. On the slide are also a number of items that are pertinent, or locations, I should say, that are pertinent to help orient those from the public. It is the site of a current, or I should say former TCF office and bank location that has been vacant for a number of years. The street view of the project shows that the building is still currently on the site, and part of this proposal would be for the demolition. Val will go through a little bit more detail on the applicant's proposal and specifically the application items.
All right. So we've got a number of requests in front of us today. I'll start with an overview of the project and then go into each of the evaluation criteria for the original requests. We have a couple related to the planned unit development status of the site, a PUD concept plan and general plan, which this applicant has elected to combine their applications for, but other applicants often split that up to get two levels of feedback from Planning Commission and Council. There's also a zoning district amendment to note the change from one PUD to another PUD. There's a shoreline impact plan / CUP for impervious surface above 75%. A shoreline residential PUD CUP for 50 residential condominium units, and that's for, that approval is for any project that has significant multifamily in the residential district. And then design review that includes two design deviation, one for significant massing breaks that don't provide views from the public street, Lake Street, and one for street tree spacing in excess of our max spacing of 26 feet. But to give more of an overview of the application, we'll get into this a little bit, but the site is broken up into cores. So it's one long building that stretches a lot of the length of the site. From there, it comes up and goes into 6 different cores. You can see that those first two sets of colors, one is pink, one is blue. The blue is commercial space and the pink is residential. And then you can see that the floors going up from there are all residential. Some renderings for reference. The first one is if you're standing on Lake Street looking looking west, you'll see that east end of the property. The second image is one that shows the applicant's proposed massing break treatment. The third is one that shows the project from Lake Minnetonka. And then the fourth just gives you a better idea of some of the architectural detailing associated with some of those facades that you'll be able to see. For a little bit more detail, these are the elevations along Lake Street. These are compliant with our design standards in terms of materiality and articulation. It's just those massing breaks that we'll talk about later. You can see a lot of feedback has been taken into account when putting these together. And then these are the elevations for the rear, just to give you a reference point for that view from, Grove Lane, Lake Minnetonka, that sort of area. For your reference, the rear elevations are not subject to the same public-facing design standards that the front are. That's because it fronts railroad property and not the right-of-way. So that's one reason why they might look a little different than the front. The project does include open space, a couple of different kinds. The two open spaces on the end are public open space. There's some improvements for both of those that I'll run through in a moment. The blue is landlord-controlled public open space. It's how, if you're standing on the street and you want to walk up and go through the property in order to see out the other side, you'd use those blue areas. And then those pink and purple areas are landlord-controlled, either commercial or residential open space. So those areas just behind those buildings, which would be for the benefit of those tenants, whether they're commercial or residential. That east side would be sort of refurbishing the existing sort of mini park over there. A lot of improvements with landscaping, seating, a lot of stuff that would ostensibly fit in with Panaway a bit more than it does now. And then improving that west green space at Lake and Ferndale, which I believe would also include a lot of stormwater infrastructure to deal with that increased impervious surface. So the building height is something that is a little complicated to calculate on a site like this. It's a very long site, and one of the things that happens along Lake Street is that the slope changes from end to end. So if you're standing on the east end, you're going to be seeing a building that feels taller, and that's because when we draw a grade plane through a sloped site, one end is going to have the grade plane kind of sit above the actual ground, and the other end is going to have the grade plane sit below the actual ground. So in terms of designing a building, on the end where the grade plane's a bit high, you get a little bit of extra, sort of actual height to work with, versus where it starts to slope up at the other end, you get less, quote unquote, actual height to work with. But with the entire building overall, we always measure from the grade plane. So the measurement from the grade plane is that 30 feet, and it is compliant. And one correction, that should say 3 stories and 35 and not 2 and 30. That's an error on my part. Just one more illustration of how that building height changes end to end. Similarly, you can see how the average grade plane treats that sort of underground parking area differently from end to end as well. In terms of density, this is always something we have to look at in conformance with the comprehensive plan. There are 50 dwelling units proposed over the acreage of the site. That works out to about 26 units per acre. And in our central business district, we allow for 20 to 30 units per acre, so that's compliant with our comprehensive plan. When looking at parking, in previous iterations of this proposal, this has been a big talking point. With this one, there's sufficient parking provided. There's no shared parking CUP requested, so each of those spots are designated for their use and don't need to share between uses. Each residential unit will have its own spaces, and then commercial will also have their own spaces. There's a discussion to be had about, that commercial space being office and retail. Both of those uses are 3 per 1,000 when it comes to spaces per square footage. So those are a little bit interchangeable in that respect. I did also want to highlight loading and deliveries. This is another significant point of discussion that's been made. If a larger box truck were to use the site, or were to use the site to load and service either those residential units or the commercial space, there's now sufficient turning movements on the site so that that truck turning around can be accommodated on the site instead of potentially having to back out onto Lake Street. The parking, other than that, is all interior. So one of the core's first floor, core A6, has 15 parking spaces inside the building. You can pull in on the west side. And then all of the underground parking associated with the residential stretches end to end under the whole building and can be entered from the east side near that parking and loading area. Tree preservation, quite a few trees are being removed, but there's also a history with the site of dead, diseased, and dying trees, so all of that's been taken into account. The required inches to replace are about 274 inches. The applicant is proposing 249, And then they're proposing to use fee in lieu of tree replacement for the other 25. And that plan with some limited comments is acceptable to the city forester as is. So the requests in front of us for the PUD specifically are that zoning amendment and then those concept and general plans. I'm not going to run through every single question right now. That'll be for your discussion, but I just want to highlight the kinds of things we'll want to focus on. So for the PUD zoning amendment, we'll want to talk about compliance with the policy of the comp plan, how it fits in with the neighborhood. Is it producing a negative effect? And, you know, does it really fit in with that central business district comp plan guidance around shops and office uses? For the concept plan, are we talking about, you know, innovations in development, higher standards of design, creative use of land, the comp plan again, and creating a more desirable environment that might be achieved than by strict application of the zoning code as it is today? With the general plan, similar, we want to talk more about the comprehensive plan, any detrimental effects, and then consideration of the natural features of the site. For the Shoreland Overlay District, there's two requests. One is this Shoreland Impact Plan conditional use permit for 85% impervious surface coverage. We ask this of any project that's going to propose over 75%, and that's been asked for with a couple of projects along Lake Street recently, not all, but most of them. And then I also mentioned this PUD CUP for 50 residential condominium units. What this request has staff go through in terms of analysis is a series of tiers, basically saying if you're going to have density near the lake, we want it to get less dense as you get really close to the lake. So this is within the shoreline district, but not right on the lake. So to that end, the proposed density in terms of those tiers is compliant with the PUD CUP requirements. But the Planning Commission can still talk about, you know, some of that stormwater mitigation that the applicant has mentioned, and, you know, whether this sort of blends in with the shoreline and vegetation, although that's probably a little bit more applicable to other projects. So this design deviation is for massing breaks, and typically in our code, or rather always in our code, we ask for a massing break at least 25 feet in width for every 150 feet of facade length, depending on the district. The specific design standard that we're talking about here talks about development between Lake Street and the shoreline of Wayzata Bay. This is not a lot of properties, but this is one of them. And it notes that those developments shall provide any significant massing breaks as mid-block connections to provide views of Lake Minnetonka and allow for potential future access to the lake. I have those circles up there because the applicant has quite a few places, 5, throughout the project that could be those massing breaks. However, because the massing break language asks for a view of Lake Minnetonka, there's 3 of those massing breaks that don't provide a view of Lake Minnetonka, either because the homes on Grove Lane are in the way, or the boatworks is in the way, or the grade is such that it's not feasible. So we're only looking at those 2 potential massing breaks in red as needing to comply with this standard. So I wanted to highlight this set of floor plans just one more time to show that typically when we show the site plan for this site, it usually cuts sort of through the first floor of the site, so you can see those 6 separate cores pretty strongly. But then as you go up into those second and third floors, you can see that that massing break gets closed in by those residential units on either side. So you can see that those massing breaks don't continue upward throughout the site. The applicant has proposed that they're providing a view by sort of keeping that first floor open so that you can still walk up and see, but not necessarily providing it up above and having those 2 residential units sort of cross over. The reference we have for this is within the Design Standards Handbook, which shows a clear break all the way through the building. And just to note, this is for both of those cores. And this is one more example of what one of those cores might look like. So when we look at design deviations, we evaluate them differently from variances, differently from conditional use permits and that sort of thing. We have a different set of standards. Basically, a significant deviation requires a finding that the negative impact of the deviation is outweighed by 1 or more of the following factors. And I didn't do a great job of listing these factors, but it talks about greater conformity to other design standards. You know, is there an undue burden involved with current leasing, housing, and commercial conditions? And then, you know, does approving that massing break have a positive effect on the area? Maybe that particular design standard isn't a good fit for a particular site or a different neighborhood. This Planning Commission has evaluated design standards before. And then the question that, you know, staff asked in order to determine whether it was a deviation at all was, do those massing breaks provide views of Lake Minnetonka or allow for potential future access to the lake? So that should also be discussed by the Planning Commission. The other design deviation is for maximum street tree spacing. Our design standards ask for street trees for a lot of projects like this one and notes that the maximum spacing of trees shall be 26 feet, but also provides some stipulations about how those trees should be planted. There's not a lot of use to street trees that are planted in really tiny wells or in areas where they're not going to thrive. For this particular project, there was a discussion between the city, the applicant, and Three Rivers Park District because we have that multi-use trail that runs along Lake Street. The discussion was that where that trail hugs really close to the building or the property today, adding more tree wells would actually negatively impact that trail usage because it would start impacting that and cutting in. So that's where that design deviation came from. And similar to the other deviation, you ask yourself the same questions about conformity and accommodating uses and having a positive effect. The public review process thus far, we've had our standard notification, sending a letter to neighbors from the city and from the applicant, also getting published in the newspaper. Before the Planning Commission packet was published on Thursday, we had not received any comments. Since then, we've received, I think, 2 or 3 more comments, which have been both printed for the Planning Commission to view and also are available printed up front for the public to view. The applicant also held their required neighborhood meeting on March 13th and had 15 people in attendance. The discussion included questions regarding access to Lake Street, commercial uses that might be in play, construction, delivery, open space, some discussion around public art, which has been going on for a little while now, and then, of course, impacts related to the railroad. The next steps from here are we finish the staff presentation. The Planning Commission can now have some dialogue with staff, ask some questions. The applicant will then give their presentation. They've got a series of slides. From there, asking questions of the applicant based on everything we've heard, the public hearing after that, and then the Planning Commission's deliberation and recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Quarles. Commissioners, anyone have any questions for staff at this point?
I have a question.
Mr. Allen?
Could you remind us why the massing break area between A1 and A2 would not have views of the lake? Is that because of the elevation of the railroad track, or how could that not have a view of the lake?
I default to planner's waiver on it, but my understanding is a combination of grading and the boatworks building being in the way as well.
The building.
Planner Quarles is correct. The height of the railroad berm prevents any views from the street. If you remember the site, if you were to turn south off of Lake at Berry, you have quite a railroad berm to cross over, while if you were at Ferndale, that's an at-grade crossing. So the railroad tracks get lower as you head to the west. At the location of the massing break between A1 and A2, it's over 6 feet in height, that berm. So even if there was an opening, there's no way to view Lake Minnetonka from the street as the code stipulates.
And the view must be from the street.
That is the code language of where to measure from, yes.
So it does not take into consideration anybody who might be across Lake Street living on the second floor of a building or...
That is not what the code reads.
Okay.
Commissioner Schwalbe?
Okay, so regarding that code then, I can understand wanting people who previously had a view to have a view with these massing breaks of the water. But if it's only the first floor that's open, there's other things to take into consideration, and I don't know if this has to do with the Design Standards Handbook or not, but there's also, for the people on the other side of the street, sky views, sunrise, sunset, stars, all that are lost if you have only a small opening. But what you're saying is that is not something we should take into consideration?
No, that is not what I'm saying. It's the measurement is from the street, not multiple stories up across the street. But all the things that you talk about are contemplated in the figure that's in the design guideline that shows the opening where there is a view being complete through the entire building.
So if you happen to have property across the street, but it's not a place that has a view of the water per se, you can't take into consideration that now there's no sky view or other things that come with sky watching.
That is from the city code that says the view is measured from the street. So,
Is that something that, as a planning commission, we can take into consideration if we want to?
not at this current meeting. The view from the street is the way the code is today and when the applicant submitted. But that is something at a future meeting you can bring up if you want to change. But we are working with the code as it exists today.
What future meeting are you talking about?
If you wish to discuss code amendments in the future, you could work with the chair to try to determine a meeting. But today, we're working with the code that's written and adopted.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Question.
Commissioner Severson.
Do you have any idea on the unit count at some of the adjacent properties, like Ventana, Wayzata Blue, Meyer Place?
I could look it up. I don't have it right at me. Ventana's in the upper 20s, and I'd have to look what Wayzata Blue was. I didn't work on that project.
But 50 is a lot more, but this is a much bigger property. So I'm just trying to get a sense of like comparisons.
Yeah, those properties are configured in a different alignment, but they are not as long as this one. You know, those properties are narrow at the street itself and deeper. But you know, and I don't know, Val, if you could go back to the aerial image, but this property goes the entire distance from Ferndale to Barry, where on the north side of Lake Street, you know, that's almost broken into 2 blocks because there's Edgewood Court in between. And even looking at the 1 block that has Ventana and Wayzata Blue, there's still the future 201 Lake Street, and then there's Melvin's 235, which is completely an office building. But you could see that this project is the equivalent of the 2 blocks on the north side of Lake Street.
Thank you.
Quick question for you. Just when we were talking about massing breaks, what's the total facade length of the structure?
The total building footprint to building footprint is about 760 feet.
760 feet?
Yep. But then at the first floor, where they have those first floor pedestrian connections, none of the cores are wider than 150 foot each.
Okay.
Looking at it at the first floor only.
And all of those plazas / walkways are 25 feet wide or wider? Is that right?
I believe the one between cores 5 and 6, because that has that 2-way parking to go under, that one might be a little wider, but the other 4 are exactly 25 feet
Okay.
wide.
And just to, my apologies, this is mislabeled as well. It should be 1, 2, 3, not grade for second.
No worries.
So then on where it says grade level floor, that's first level, right?
Yes, yep,
then
so
on
it's
the-
first and then second and then third.
On the far left, which is the west end, that's a surface parking lot.
Correct.
Okay, so there's no building structure there?
Basically, the exterior walls are there. So, you know, when we looked at
Oh,
the
I see.
elevation,
Okay.
it looks like the rest of the elevation, but there's no,
There's
other
nothing on the
than, other
first.
than an elevator shaft and a stairwell, there's no heated, you know, temperature-controlled space.
So it's like a garage, basically. Oh, I see, okay.
But from the facade, that first floor looks like the other first floors.
And that parking is for the commercial property?
That's the intent. I know the applicant is talking about doing secure residential parking in their narrative. This was listening to the last application for 200 Lake Street, that there was, people could get confused that they have to go underground. You may miss that spot. Gives them another opportunity, gives them, if you were shopping in one of the shops, you can get out and walk down the sidewalk and, get to that space.
And then it looks like on the right side or the east end, that like box with the crosses, that's the entrance
Correct.
for
There
the
is,
parking that's underground.
right, so it is the ramp, and particularly that box truck loading, which requires a little bit more height, and then a little bit of a ramp. It's just the way that worked, that ground level, or first level had more mechanical spaces than the front. Now, you will see, it's not color-coded, but because of that, on what's labeled landscape grade level, in that first core, there is a storefront. So when you're on the sidewalk in front of A1, which is actually that landscape grade level, you would have a door to enter that core. So it's kind of, the two levels intermingle in that one particular core.
Commissioners, anyone else? Okay, thank you, staff. Oh, sure.
Can I go back to the massing breaks again, because I'm a little, the applicant is asking for a deviation from what is code on the massing breaks, correct?
Well, technically, the applicant does not believe they need a deviation. They believe they're meeting the code. We as staff do not, and this is the presentation of why.
So that's what we're discussing then?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to understand that after Bonnie's questions. Okay. I don't have any more questions, Blake.
Okay, cool. Good? All right, well, thank you, staff. At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant to come forward and address the commission. Please state your name and address for the record and your role on the applicant's team. I think we've got like 20 minutes or so set aside for you guys, so hopefully we can keep it in that window, but if you need a little extra time, we're a little flexible too. We just want to be out of here by midnight.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful. Good evening. My name is Kurt Fretham. I'm with Lake West Development at 14525 Highway 7 in Minnetonka. I'd like to take a moment and thank you, Chair Cameron, the Planning Commission, the Wayzata community, and especially city staff for their patience and diligence in helping us through this development approval process. As you know, we've been through many applications, half a dozen, give or take, but then again, who's counting? Although this development approval process has been lengthy, we remain enthusiastic about this redevelopment. Through this journey of applications, we've learned a lot. Through this journey, we've also, you'll see tonight, been listening. That said, we also acknowledge that we cannot please everyone's desires, but we can build on the momentum and the positives from our former applications and embrace the city's direction, that direction being that we were close to an approval on our last application, and albeit close from a standpoint of we were missing on two primary concerns, those two primary concerns being related to parking and related to zoning or not rezoning, as well as a number of ancillary requests from the city. With all that in mind, we've went to work. We went to work on complying with each and every one of the city's requests. And because of this, we respectfully ask the Planning Commission recommend approval of our application and help bring this development, the Landmark, to life. Next, I'm going to turn the podium over to Kelsey and Cody from our office to walk you through our fulfillment of your requests.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Thompson with Lake West Development. I'm the Development Director. Please excuse my voice tonight. I have 2 kids in daycare. We are all recovering from a cold, but it was really important for me to be here tonight to see this project through. Most of you know this site, walk or drive by this site, and are maybe familiar with some of our previous plans to develop this 1/4-mile-long stretch of property overlooking Lake Minnetonka. We fell in love with this property. We know the area well as community members ourselves, and I worked over the past 5 years with the city, listening to feedback from the Planning Commission, from council, and from the community, and feel that the time is now to finally develop this site. So what are some benefits of our plans to develop this site now? One of the benefits of these plans is improving the safety of the site and the community. The building that was once a former bank, built over 30 years ago, has been in the hands of multiple owners with years of deferred maintenance. On top of the deferred maintenance, the building has been sitting vacant for over half a decade, which unfortunately has been broken into multiple times and vandalized beyond repair. The intruders unfortunately left a roof hatch open and the pipes froze, which caused a massive water leak and flooded the building. This has left the building in a state far beyond reasonable repair. It's full of mold, which you can see on the bottom right-hand corner. The electrical, the mechanicals, the elevators, the heating systems, it's all been destroyed. The building and the property are blighted. We've taken extra security measures, boarded up the back of the building, and have been working with the police department. However, break-ins unfortunately continue to happen. This is a more recent picture on the left where you can see that the boards were forcefully ripped off. And while the boards are Band-Aids, they are not a long-term solution. We'd prefer to keep the front from being boarded up or a fence put around the property for aesthetics reasons, and are hopeful that by getting this project started now, we won't have to take those additional safety measures. So what's the solution? The solution is revitalizing a neglected, vacant building with a charming, bright, and welcoming mixed-use development, creating a landmark for Wayzata that will be celebrated. Landmark Wayzata is designed to be an extension of Wayzata's lifestyle that thoughtfully complements and enhances the experiences residents and the community cherish. Another safety benefit of our plans to redevelop this site is the environmental cleanup. As seen in this historical photograph, this site was used as a lumber yard and an oil tank storage. The soils have contaminants in them that are polluting the groundwater and unfortunately have untreated stormwater that's running off the site directly into the lake where our kids swim and play. As stewards and users of the lake, a big benefit to this project is that the soils will be remedied, the contaminants removed, and we'll put in a robust treatment system for the stormwater, which is furthering the safety of the community. And without this development of this site, it'll just continue to go untreated. Another benefit of the project is the charming architecture and design. What makes Wayzata so special is the small town character and charming lakeside community that it is. The reality of what's there now is an abandoned, deteriorating building and site that is beyond repair. It provides no benefit to the community, no public space, and no connection to the lake. This project transforms that blighted property into a place where people can gather, interact, and enjoy Wayzata's charm. This same architectural style was presented in our previous application, which was denied for other reasons, but the architectural elements and charm were well received by the council, by the planning commission, and by the community. Therefore, we kept the same design elements that create this stunning curb appeal. Much more in keeping with Wayzata's charm than the cold, dark, up to 54-foot tall building that's there now. And the charm isn't just in the colors and the materials that we use, but in the way that the building interacts with the sidewalk and the streetscape, inviting pedestrians to engage with the building recesses, providing areas for seating along the way, and a space to spontaneously connect. The fully ADA compliant building is designed with upper story step backs so that two-story elements really define Lake Street, furthering the goals of the comprehensive plan for development to occur on a smaller human scale. Another benefit of these plans is the rotunda. The rotunda is an iconic feature that gives the landmark its identity and invites connection to the west end of Lake Street. It's a characteristic of the design that was well received again in our previous application and will be something unique and special to Wayzata. I could go in more detail about the architectural charm in these renderings, but I think that they speak for themselves. The condo units will sell for a wide range in price, and I think the reality of this building being lived in gives it even more charm and small town character, especially in juxtaposition to the vacant, boarded up building that's there now. Another benefit, and maybe a broader sense of charm, is the connectivity and walkability. A new norm since COVID that we've been studying through the lens of real estate and development is spontaneous social interactions. Instead of making appointments, people desire a more organic way to meet. That's what makes Wayzata and Lake Street in particular so attractive. It's engaging and designed with many opportunities to spontaneously connect. As a community member myself, I often start on the east end of Lake Street and walk either along the Panaway or the new boardwalk and turn around once we get to Berry Avenue or the Boatworks building. Wayzata is missing something that connects the west end to the rest of Lake Street. Landmark is the missing link that'll be the bookend of Lake Street and that extends the Panaway's improvements to the west end, creating an incentive to want to walk past the Boatworks building through Shaver Park, which is a forgotten gem, and to round off Lake Street with 2 brand new parks and 5 covered viewing plazas. Another benefit of our plans and to further the connectivity are the covered viewing plazas that offer year-round use. Along the property, there are 5 of these. These are also all ADA compliant. There are essentially breaks in the building every 150 feet that provide brand new views of the lake that aren't currently there or accessible. And this image is from street level and it shows a view of the lake as you drive by. The covered viewing plazas offer a meeting space where you're able to escape the elements, which as we know are sometimes unpredictable in Minnesota. You could take an outdoor Zoom meeting, shaded from the sun, or you could just hang out enjoying the views of the lake. Just imagine if you're on a walk and it starts to rain, you could pop in here and take shelter until it passes. We discussed high level having some public viewing binoculars at the end of the massing breaks, where you can maybe take a view of the paddle boarders or the sailboats or check out the Chile Open. Another benefit of the covered viewing plazas is an opportunity to have a fireplace and maybe a hangout area, something that's sheltered from the snow, where we could have heaters along the plaza in the winter, something very unique and new to Wayzata. And another benefit of these plans and to further the connectivity are the new parks and open green space. So starting on the east end, this is over by Berry, adjacent to the depot. This is a thoughtfully designed park that integrates characteristics of the Panaway, like staff mentioned, with a winding path, gardens, and seating areas. Let's show you a few renderings. One of the requirements for these plans is to preserve 30% as open space, and our plans preserve over 50% of open space, exceeding that requirement. We've already spoken to some groups about utilizing the space for community gatherings. And here's another park on the west end of the site, next to the trail off Ferndale. Again, offering some more seating options and an area to connect and relax. We've discussed installing a public bike repair station here, being that it's along the trail. These parks also align with the city's goals in the comprehensive plan that call for Wayzata to be more walkable. Development needs to occur on a smaller human scale with smaller parks near neighborhoods. Another benefit that we're super excited about is the opportunity for public art. So we met with the Wayzata's new Public Art Steering Committee, and we shared some of these high-level ideas with them that you can see on the screen. We do have a few different spots along the development for some of the public art installations and something really special to Wayzata. Starting on the left, upper left, we discussed maybe doing like a human-sized frame potentially at the end of one of the viewing plazas just for a fun photo op, an incentive to walk by and interact. The yellow arrow is pointing to a unique space that we created near the rotunda to allow for an expression of art that'll be really special to Wayzata. We'll continue to work with the art committee on furthering these plans. And then we love this idea on the upper right-hand corner of this mosaic wall. The committee mentioned that the community is looking for a gateway sign or a mural or a sculpture, something that creates a welcome sign to Wayzata. And they mentioned that our West Park would be a good location for that, being that it's the entrance onto Lake Street from Ferndale. On the sidewalk carp on the lower left, maybe you're familiar with this, it's by Target Field. When you run your hand under it, it makes noise. Just an inspiration for something interactive like this, perhaps in our East Park. And then another idea amongst many that we shared with the art committee is the poetry benches on the lower right-hand side. Also, there's some poetry sidewalk pieces that have been successful in other communities. We did discuss this idea with the Revolution of America groups here in town and are looking to do a memorial here. Another benefit of this project is the parking features that allow for a flexibility in future uses by exceeding the parking requirements. We've got assigned stalls for the residents. We've got a semi-truck turnaround, short-term parking spaces for Ubers and Amazons that are on the surface level, and a surface level parking lot. That's a rendering of the west end. Those are some of the benefits of our project. You can read more about these on our website at wayzatalandmark.com. This project is not just about development. It's about creating a space that works for the community. We're super excited about this. Now I'm going to invite Cody up to the podium.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Cody Diedrich with Lake West. I also seem to be having voice troubles too, like Kelsey with the kids. One note I want to make to Commissioner Severson's point earlier, the same street frontage along Lake Street on the north side would have about 102 units and about 60,000 square feet of commercial on the same street frontage intensity. As Kurt mentioned earlier, we heard that our last application is very close, and there were a lot of positives. With that, I'm going to touch on some of the design deviations and talk about how we've implemented addressing the past requests and items of concern. First, the street tree deviation. You can see on the left side of the screen where Lake Street widens and the plans do not show any street trees. This is a practical difficulty and byproduct of the widening of Lake Street, the bike trail, and the sidewalk. The sidewalk encroaches on our property by 7 feet. A solution for this would be adding tree wells between the sidewalk and the landscaped areas. Either the solution of the tree wells or the deviation would be a benefit, leaving the bike trail and the sidewalk as is today. The other deviation is only regarding the lake views through significant massing breaks. The screen shows a figure of an option for a mid-block connection with a massing void. However, this is not the only way to achieve a mid-block connection. The requirements for our significant massing breaks are to provide a mid-block connection with views and access to the lake. As staff pulled up before, here are the 5 locations of significant massing breaks. We seem to agree that all 5 have access to the lake, along with meet the definition of a mid-block connection. These 2 locations are the one in question that have potential views of the lake. We thought it was clear from the exhibits we provided to staff that these did show views of the lake, and we take full responsibility and could have shown better images and delineations to help with that process. I think the next couple slides will help show that a little bit further as we talk through it. These are the 2 existing view locations from those 2 massing break locations. As you can see, the one on the left between cores 2 and 3 does not have any views today, and the one on the right is between cores 3 and 4, and there is a very minor view down in the center where you can see down on the lake. Oops, go back. If you were to put in the covered viewing plazas, they would be approximately the same height as that first floor of the TCF bank building today. I don't have a cursor to really show, but if you crossed over there, that'd be about halfway up the picture, which you'd still have access and views to the lake. This is one of the cross-section exhibits from our exhibits we provided to staff for analysis. This shows the views to the lake. So the lake elevation across is 929. The average male height on the street is about 947 between cores 3 and 4. And it'd be 943 actually between cores 2 and 3. This equals about 14 to 18 foot difference above the lake elevation, and this will always be looking down. Anything else would be looking up at the sky, which isn't part of the code. Here are some renderings of the same exhibits we provided to staff. As you can see, the lake is seen right through the viewing plaza. As you look further in the background, you can see the shoreline across the lake equal to the tree line. We request this deviation be removed based on this information and are happy to provide supplemental exhibits if necessary for the record. Now I'd like to talk about the previous application requests and items. Related to parking, it was requested that we meet the parking requirements with no utilization of the joint facilities parking agreement, that we provide assigned parking stalls for the residents, that we provide an intuitive surface parking lot, that we provide short-term parking stalls for deliveries like Amazon and Uber, like Kelsey mentioned, and also that we provide sufficient parking for flexibility in future uses if the commercial and office change. Associated with parking, it was also requested that we provide an on-site semi-truck turnaround. While we believe this would mostly be handled by short box trucks, we took this seriously and were able to accommodate the on-site semi-truck turnaround directly on site. This would be the first of its kind on Lake Street. Here's an image of that semi-truck turnaround. The other primary request was to not rezone the property. We proceeded with amending the 1989 PUD rather than changing the zoning classification in honor of this. Those are the primary open items from our previous application the staff has confirmed we've addressed. The other ancillary requests were that we shorten the building, provide more open space, provide lake views of the private property owners from across the street, modify our product type and use to reduce our parking demand and the facility's use intensity, and collaborate with the railroad on the development plans. We fulfilled these requests too. We've learned a lot from the invaluable feedback that we've received from the past applications and process. Landmark Wayzata is a result of years of planning, community input, and a commitment to ensuring this development enhances Wayzata in a way that city leaders, residents, and visitors can all be proud of. With new public viewing plazas, improved walkability, expansive parks and open space, enhanced parking solutions, and a dedicated semi-truck turnaround, this project is thoughtfully designed to fully integrate the west of Lake Street through the Panaway vision while removing a blighted property and a deteriorating unsafe building. This development will be a focal point for the community, bringing new energy and connectivity to an underutilized site, providing countless community benefits and ensuring a seamless experience from east to west along Lake Street. We look forward to working with the city and community to bring this vision to life to create Landmark Wayzata, and we are asking for your recommendation of approval because the time is now. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Cody, Kelsey, and Kurt. All right. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant or follow-up questions for staff? Commissioner Hogg.
First, I commend you on taking that feedback and addressing many of these problems, or issues that we had the last time, so thank you for doing that. And I fully feel your passion and desire to get this project going. It is attractive. I tingle kind of looking at it. It's rather exciting to see something happening there. I am curious, when you came the last time, you mentioned several times, you took the feedback, you fixed the parking, you fixed the semi-turnaround, a little more green space. But your last plan had massing breaks, I think, between every building that was proposed above street level. And now they're all gone except for first floor. So I'm curious if someone wants to share the rationale for making that decision when you had such beautiful massing breaks on the last ones, and now you've eliminated them on stories 2 and 3, which to me reduces some of the attractiveness. It's massive now. It looked more quaint and appropriate for the streetscape of Wayzata, consistent with all the other buildings along that, we have streets. I guess if there were streets going through there, you'd have to have the breaks, but it's a big, long building, particularly from the lakeside. It is not attractive that's just my opinion. But I'd be interested in rationale for eliminating those massing breaks altogether on stories 2 and 3. Can anybody say why you made that decision?
I'm not sure if I'm the best one to answer it, but I have some thoughts behind it. There's a lot of balance, push and take. We whacked a big chunk of the building off on the east end to provide the semi-truck turnaround and views to the neighbor across the street that was not required that we give them, but trying to get along and trying to be neighborly, and gave up $10+ million in revenue. And we're like, where do we try to get some of that back? And then we cut the first floor out of the 6th building on the east end. And so can we make some of that up, and where is it the least? And then can we turn it into a benefit on top of that? And so we looked at it and we said, it would be really nice, and it's unique to the community to be able to give massing break that's available for year-round use. There is nothing else like that in the community. And so it was a combination of those things, trying to create a benefit out of it, and the push and pull in trying to make a project viable. As you have something to add, go ahead.
Yeah, just to piggyback off what Kurt mentioned here, the design standards too, like the design of the mass above the viewing plazas, it's really recessed. If you can pull up maybe an image or a rendering of where you can see them, it's really recessed. So when you're looking down the street, you're not even going to know that mass is there. It's not going to look like mass. Yeah, if you're standing across, and you're looking across, you can see it's there. But the design standards do a really good job of designing a building that doesn't look so massive, A, and B, like Kurt mentioned, just with it being Minnesota, I think, there are some establishments that take up some space on the sidewalk along Lake Street where they have some enclosures that are utilized in the winter months with heaters, but we don't have anything like that for the public to enjoy. The Panaway is wonderful, but it's not covered. And again, like Kurt mentioned, once we realized that the code allowed for us to put the mass above the brakes, and still provide the intent of code, we saw the benefit in that, and it could be something really unique and special to Wayzata.
Commissioner Severson.
Can you elaborate more on the number of curb cuts that you have and drive lanes from Lake Street? All the parking garages and then the truck turnaround and that short-term parking, like we were saying for Ubers and things?
Yeah, so today there are 4 curb cuts and accesses to the property. It'll be reduced to 3 as part of this. So there's just the one on the west end for that 15 surface parking stalls, excuse me, for most of the commercial spaces. And then the one roundabout area is 2 access points, one in, one out.
And then today, there's the sidewalk immediately in front of the building, and then the bike lane or the mixed use. So will both of those stay, or will you get rid of the sidewalk and just have that bike lane? Can you?
There will remain sidewalks and bike lanes out in front. So that was the part with the street tree deviation as well too. It pinches down there and we're kind of limited, and so the tree wells is just an option. So that place we could basically put in a grate over a 3-foot by 3-foot section where a tree could grow, similar that you may see in like Minneapolis and fully paved out streets. We could do something like that if there was an interest in that to help, but our goal is to really keep that bike trail and sidewalk intact for community going by there too. So we feel like there's a benefit to that deviation or providing some other solution like the tree wells.
I have a question.
Commissioner Schwalbe.
Yes. Can we bring up the rendering of what this building looks like from the water? I think it was on about 122 of the packet. This is getting back to the massing breaks. Okay, and also the one without the tree there. I think there's another one.
There is in our packet, but I don't remember seeing one on the presentation there.
It was there.
It's here.
It's on page 121.
Yeah,
Okay, 121,
yeah, there it is.
other way.
Yeah.
Okay. So from the water, with just those short one-story massing breaks, it does look very much like one very long white building from the back with a little bit of brick here and there. And my concern is, doesn't really feel small-town charming to me. I think that if those breaks, or at least the 2 that are required, went all the way through 3 stories, it would look less like a large block of one thing after the other after the other. Because how it looks from the water is important. People are on the water all the time, and it's a great big piece. There was some sort of a development that went on in Mound a few years ago that was very much, took up a block or 2, maybe 3 of space that looks from the water very much building, 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 building. So but just goes back to the massing breaks. With at least 2 of those totally open 2 stories or 3 stories, I think it would be more charming and less industrial looking. That's my point of view.
I would say, though, to focus on the rendering above this, so this rendering shows the trees removed, so all those homes would show that piece, as you can see, so this is the only point you would see from the, just to clarify,
Yeah,
though.
I know.
Yep.
Anyone else?
I have a question for you guys. On the backside of this, it looked like there's a walkway. Is there a walkway kind of that would go, a public walkway along the backside of the entire building? It was hard to tell from the drawings.
I don't think.
Portions of it, so that could be patio areas for those commercial spaces, for their office use, whatever it may be. The residential ones will be private patios as you get to cores 4 and 5. The other ones likely will have access through there, through the commercial use or just public in general.
So not all the way,
So not all the
like
way.
end to end.
Not all the way from end to end. You can, it depends on what the user wants to do there, but if an office user is there and they're conducting business, they probably might not want somebody coming and knocking on their door. Can you give me directions to wherever? or they may want to set up and use that space as a part of their office, so it depends. If it's a retailer, they might, or if they're all retailers, they might want that passage through there. So we're uncertain how, at this point, how that will actually be used.
Okay. And, but it will, so not all of it, you wouldn't be able to walk from the east end down to the west end on the back of the building?
It's not planned for that.
Okay.
Can I make one other comment?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to say that you've made some of what was commercial space now into condos on the first floor. So there are now some first-floor condos. That sounds as if that makes up that additional number of condos to get to 50. So are there more condos that are going to go on floor 2 and 3, where those breaks would have been before that you now have covered plazas?
Well, we removed condos on the east end by shortening the building. And we infilled but the actual breakdown, I don't know, that would take a study to tell you
Okay.
exactly where they went. But they are condos that are filled into those massing breaks, yes.
And the piece with the commercial too, the commercial got cut in half from about 40,000 down to that 19-ish thousand.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The commercial space got cut in about half, from about 40 down to 19,000
And how many units were added there?
it'd be
How many
there's
units?
four in each core, so it'd be 8 units on that first floor.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Van Loy?
Yeah, to continue what Commissioner Schwalbe said about the rear end, to me, well, it looks like a very singular white building. And I know that you weren't bound by the design standards because it wasn't facing, a city street. But I was wondering if you considered the design standards in order to make it feel very much like the same look and feel of Wayzata from the water as it does from the street.
Well, we considered that it meets the design standards on all sides. We spent all of our, we spent a lot on the front. The backside you don't see. I mean, I sit on the lake and I try to point out where the building is, close in, and where's the building? I can't see it. I say it's that building right there, the 60-foot, you still can't see it. You're gonna have a hard time seeing it continue, even though now it's white instead of brown, but, so it's important that the backside looks good, but we did not give it the same level of detail in front, yeah.
What is the length of the new building versus the existing one that you can't see from the lake?
I think it was called out as 760 feet, give or take.
This new one?
Yes.
And what's the existing one?
270, 300, somewhere in that range.
Okay, thanks.
I'd like to jump in on a question that was asked earlier that you partially answered. You asked about what the densities were across the street. In that same quarter-mile stretch across the street, there's 102 residential units and 60,000 square feet of commercial space. We're half that, 50 units, and 20,000, 1/3 of the commercial. So we're half and a third of the intensity across the street, to put it in perspective.
One other question that I have. I have a dog, and I walk by this building all the time, and I've seen it falling apart. And I've also seen how treacherous the sidewalk is in the winter. And I'm concerned with a building with the second and third stories blocking more of the sunlight, that sidewalk on the north side will continue to be treacherous, except longer. And I'm just wondering if you've given consideration to that maintenance of the sidewalk in order to better serve the public.
We have, and we didn't do an official shadow study, but given the sun rises in the east and falls in the west, the sun on the street side is going to be the same whether on the north or the south, because the sun's not rising in the north, or coming from the north. So from a shadow standpoint, it's not a lot of effect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, although the sun does, your rise and set is correct, but it goes along the southern.
Yep.
So you get the shadows toward the north. That's why people want southern-facing homes and southern-facing driveways. So it definitely will be affected from wherever there's a second and a third story, even a first story, but certainly a second and third story that will be cast onto the north sidewalk.
Yeah, and we'll have a full snow chloride management plan in place when we get through that, or to handle all the salting and hopefully pet-friendly salting and all that stuff too.
Thank you.
Excellent. Commissioners, anybody else? All right. Thank you, staff. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Elk.
Can I direct one to you?
Absolutely.
At this time too? Can you bring up the image that shows the massing breaks, just in the diagram? I don't know if it's with the code or it showed those little blocks. No, it was just kind of in the design standards, I think. That. So those images exist in our design standards, is that correct?
The image in the
Lower right-hand
bottom
corner.
corner is the one that exists in our handbook. The rest are from the applicant.
Yes. So again, I'm going to go back, and I appreciate the rationale you provide, and it makes sense. I get the whole economics thing, but when you look at an image like that in the design standards, it looks pretty clear that a massing break is through the building entirely, not just one level. So I'm just curious how you looked at that, how you read 99.07 and concluded that what you are requesting, one isn't a deviation and one is in alignment with the design standards. I don't know. I read 909.7, it's pretty clear. Significant massing breaks, facade that responds to the small-scale character of Wayzata. Big, long, massive thing is certainly not an appearance of small scale. So again, I'm just after I get the economics, but I don't quite get, when you look at the design standards, how you concluded that.
From a scale standpoint, you can measure it in a lot of ways. You can measure it FAR, you can measure it by density, you can measure it by open space, by the number of parking stalls in comparison. So we have more parking stalls than are needed. We're at 50% open space, not 30. We check a lot of those boxes. That is one way you can create a massing break. As staff has said, 4 of the massing breaks meet the criteria. It's these 2 that are called out on page 6 of the staff report. The only reason, according to the staff report, that we're seeking a deviation, this is not our words, this is a staff report that says this, page 6 towards the bottom of it, it says because we're not providing a view to the lake. Well, we are. It's that simple. The elevations, it's basic math. The math says that if you put up that other slide we provided, your eye level is at 945, the lake's down at 928. There's 20 feet of elevation difference. To look to the sky for the lake is like, it's not up there. We don't need Einstein in the room to tell us that. And so we're meeting the intent in the ordinance with respect to providing what we've provided. Now, if you're asking for a view of the sky, that's not what the ordinance asks us to do. They asked us to provide a view of the lake, and we did that.
Just to add on to that, The renderings that you have for these, the two massing breaks that are in question, show the view once you're inside the, what did you call it? Covered viewing plaza. Do you have views of renderings of what this looks like from the sidewalk in those two cases?
There was one in our presentation, and that's where we could have done a better job of sharing that with staff earlier. We fully agree.
I
That
looked for it and couldn't find it. That's why I've been looking for both of,
Yeah.
from that area, from the sidewalk, so that we can take.
Go back to our presentation that we provided, there are some of those renderings from the street level.
And an image, picture.
There's a picture. The one other thing I'd like to, excuse me, point out about the code section though, is so there's two ways to have a significant massing break. There's one is the mid-block connection, and the other one is a massing void. We feel that if they wanted to be a massing void between Lake Street, it would have both types of significant massing breaks, a mid-block connection and a massing void. And when you look at this figure 3.2 out of the Design Standards Handbook, this is what's defined as a mid-block connection. After you read the mid-block connections section, it says see figure 3.2. Now I will say the text below that talks about between the lake and the shoreline when you read figure 3.2. But with that same logic too, staff has agreed that they're mid-block connections and that we qualify for those. So that's where it comes back to the views again, to Kurt's point. So the code supports it from that standpoint. The figure shows a mid-block connection, and we've been analyzed and found to be mid-block connections for these as we're presenting from staff. So that's where the piece is.
Our struggle is tell us how we're not providing a view of the lake with what we provided.
Excellent. Well, thank you, applicants. Kurt,
Yeah.
Cody. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, staff. I'd like to turn to the public hearing portion of the meeting. Couple quick comments on the public hearing portion. Public hearing is a time for us to listen to members of the community about the approval requests we are considering. It's part of the process, it's a very important part of the process that allows the members of the public and the community to participate and add their perspectives as we consider these requests. Any questions asked during the public hearing will be held until the end of the hearing and may be addressed at that point by staff. That said, I will now open the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please come forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and let us know if you are connected to the applicant in any way or representing anyone else or as part of a group.
Good evening. Darren Knight. I'm a lawyer and a real estate broker in town. I've been in front of you folks before a few times on behalf of my clients, the Zitzloff family, Lowell Zitzloff. A Westway LLC is a condominium development immediately across the street from 200 Lake. I have Jeff Zitzloff with me with the family. Lowell is watching, and he's been in front of you many times. He's watching. He wanted to thank you guys all for the hard work that you do, as he's been a good developer, responsible developer in this town for a long time, and owns property in this area. And so, he has Jeff, his son, here with me. We have a lot of respect for Kurt and his group. We've talked to them. We believe in property rights, and we believe they should be able to develop something across the street. But this is a really big building, and it takes, when somebody said it compares to 2 blocks across the street. It's a very long building. And we just believe there should be massing breaks from the street level to the sky, which is that one depiction shows. And we believe all 5. And I'm going to gently disagree with city staff. I believe, perhaps not from the street, but even from the street, I think you could probably see the lake from all 5 of those spots in some small degree. And if you walked up into those openings, I'll bet some money, and I'm not a good bettor, but I'd bet some money you'll be able to see the lake if you walked up into those 5 openings. So we believe there should be 5 openings from street level to the sky. And that is really our main disagreement. We believe that they've done a lot of hard work. They've worked very hard on this for a long time. Again, Kurt's a smart, very accomplished developer. And we respect that a lot. But we believe that those massing breaks are crucial, not just for our building across the street, but for the public at large. And also their setbacks. They should have more setbacks. We believe, we had put 9 and 10-foot setbacks across the street on our building. And we had to create kind of a mini park over there. And we have a much narrower building. It goes deeper. But we created a massing break between an east and a west building over there, which they have not provided. So we'd like the same rules to apply here. So we had a 9-foot setback on one building and a 10-foot on the other. And again, we created a massing break all the way to the sky. We didn't cover it. If we covered it, we could have built another condo or two that way as well. And we did not do that. So again, that's the main thing we're focusing on. There should be 25-foot breaks every 150 feet, and I think accessible to the public in some regard, so they could walk in there. That was the main thing we wanted to talk about. And we don't, again, with all respect, we don't think it's an undue burden on the developer in this case, because I represent developers. We want him to make all kinds of money. But he's going to have to reduce some of those condo sizes a little bit. I still think that they should be able to monetarily come out okay. I don't think there's an undue burden on the developer in that regard. And those were the main points I wanted to make. Talked about the setback. And again, if they do a proper setback on the west side of the building, they could add more trees. And we understand it's a narrow parcel, but we believe they could fix that. That setback, it might be 3 or 4 feet in some spots. It should be, again, equivalent to what we had to do, 9 or 10. So, Jeff, do you have any comments?
No.
So,
Overall supportive, they did a great job getting the charm for Wayzata, and we're not against it. I just think sometimes if you look from the street view, you can see through, but what if you're higher than the street view, then the covers do impede the view from up a level or two from across the street, not only our building. Other than that, they've done a great job, and I think it's a good project.
and we sent you a detailed letter that I assume you guys all got. I hope you did. And if you take a look at this, that building marked in red on that rendering we gave you of the existing building versus what they're going to do. This is a long building. So these massing breaks are really important. And I think, and again, not to be too negative here, you're going to have a dark, colder side of the street if this is allowed as submitted, and for a long ways down that street, which doesn't just affect, again, property owners. That's the general public going up and down that street. So, thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. My name is Kevin Sullivan. I live in Plymouth, and this is Michelle White. And we both represent the revolutionary groups that Kelsey had spoken about before. I represent the Sons of the American Revolution, and Michelle represents the Daughters of the American Revolution. And we, in conjunction with the Children of the American Revolution, we are the folks that put on the Flying Pancake Breakfast that we have at the Union Depot, and we've been doing that for 20 years now. And we've never really embarked on anything like this before, and the reason that we're here today is because in 2026 is the 250th anniversary of our country and the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So our groups nationally are looking to put in beautification pieces in each state in the country. And our societies have decided that the best place to do it in the entire state of Minnesota is in Wayzata because of the support that the city of Wayzata has given us for the Flying Pancake Breakfast. So we were working with Jeff Dahl on perhaps having something at the Union Depot spot, and then Jeff had indicated that there was this new exciting development that was in the planning stages, and they said that they had a beautification portion of it, and we've got some ideas about beautification insofar as 250th commemorative benches or a flagpole with a bicentennial Betsy Ross flag on it, or some pavers. You know, we haven't quite gotten into the granular details of what they would be, but we think it would be fantastic for the city of Wayzata to, in the green space that they're looking to have the sons of the American Revolution, the daughters of the Revolution, and the children of the American Revolution have a representation in those green spaces. So we're here to support the project, support the community, and be a part of the community. And we hope that the discussion moves towards fruition and that their project goes ahead. And somehow or another, we can work out an incorporation of the green space for our groups and a bench or something like that that would make it meaningful for people that are walking through the city of Wayzata to have a reflection point and think about what a fantastic country this is. So Michelle?
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you. As Kevin mentioned, I'm Michelle White. I'm the regent of the Lake Minnetonka Chapter, National Society, Daughters of the American Revolution. We're headquartered here in Wayzata. Our 160 members come from all over the west side of Minneapolis, many from Wayzata, several of whom are here this evening to support. And so we're a women's service organization, much like the SAR. We focus on 3 pillars, which are education, historic preservation, and patriotism. And so for many years, DAR has supported the Lake Minnetonka chapter Flying Pancake Breakfast, as Kevin mentioned. We're always out there. The CAR, as we call them, the Children of the American Revolution, they are the Lake Minnetonka chapter, Children of the American Revolution. They're an offshoot of our organization. So we're always there to support them. This annual event is always a big draw to the community. In fact, that turn off Berry Street toward the depot, that's where our patrons line up for the pancake breakfast. And last year, over 1,000 people lined up. And so our interest is in the east side of this development, that park that the developer was talking about, with art installations. And we really think that we could put something meaningful there. In particular, our goal is to place it for July 4th, 2026, the 250th anniversary of the founding of the country. And it would coincide with the Flying Pancake Breakfast and be a wonderful event and a way to pull people down Lake Street to see whatever might be in that park. We'd love to work with the new commission on art that was spoken about to see exactly what would go there and be appropriate. We don't really have any specific plans other than a bench maybe at this time, right? So anyway, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to get involved and thank the community that's been so kind to us. And we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Kevin. Director Sharp, do we have any members of the public on Teams would like to speak?
We do not.
Excellent. All right, is there anyone I missed that would like to speak this evening? Seeing none, I will close the public meeting and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff or the applicant at this point, or questions that were raised during the public hearing that you'd like staff to address?
Excuse me. I'm just going to reiterate that I was trying to get a view of, from the street, of the viewing plazas between the two that we're talking about. All of the views that I saw are shown from inside the viewing plaza, not from the street. And it appears that there are ramps to go up into those viewing plazas based on your submission. So I'm actually trying to understand if from the street you're actually going to get much of a view, or if you're going to have to go up those ramps in order to get that view.
Thank you, and that's a great question. We're trying to clarify this as best as we can, but maybe Val, if you could just jump to the other PowerPoint. And then if you could scooch up to maybe a little bit further up. Yeah. Okay, down. Yeah, I think it's right after here. Yep, just right in here somewhere. Or maybe this one. I think it's this one, yeah. It's very difficult to see because the color of the lake blends in so much with the sky. So probably anyone sitting in the audience as part of the community, you're probably not going to see where that lake and sky is delineated. But for those of you who have a screen in front of your face, you might be able to tell like the sky and where that is delineated with the lake. But this is from our architect's 3D model. They put in the entire grades and everything from real life, and then they impose the building on top of that. So this would be what you see from the height of an average male as we used for our example.
So which cores are these and which is this looking through?
I think this would be between cores 3 and 4. And we have the same renderings for the core between, or for the break between cores 2 and 3. I just don't think we have it in this presentation. But we're happy to provide that, as we mentioned, if staff or you want some supplemental materials to show that the view of the lake is there.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I have a question for the applicant. If we go down to the next slide, number 19, what is the height of the ceiling here, the overhang? It looks quite narrow here. I didn't look at the section to get the dimension from floor to ceiling.
It's 10 feet.
10? Okay.
Yeah, 25 feet wide, 10 feet tall.
I have a question.
Yes.
Of staff. It appears that there is a difference of opinion in the design standards which should apply to these massing breaks. It appears that the developer feels that having this view number 19, on all of them, all 5 would be sufficient, but that the city feels that the standards require that at least those 2 lake view ones, which are what, 3 and 4? Is it 3 and 4? That you would prefer to have be 3 stories tall, not have a ceiling? Am I right?
Yes, and I'm going to ask Val to go through, between 3 documents to help. Can we start with Lowell's document? And can we zoom in to the very top where they've provided the text of this particular section? And so I know that's small and a lot of words there, but it's important because there's A1 and there's A2.
I'm sorry, what was that?
At the very top, it says A, and then there's a 1 and a 2. So there's 2 sections of the code. Now, 1 would be anywhere in the city. Doesn't have to be by Lake Minnetonka, anywhere in the city. You have 2 choices. A massing void, the maximum width of 25 feet above the ground floor, extending through the depth of the building. That's actually what Zitzloff did for 201 Lake. The first floor continues between the 2 buildings, and then above that is a break. B, a publicly accessible mid-block pedestrian connection or street through the building with a clear view. So that's what they've provided. That would be like, sorry, I'm spacing on the building in front of the Mill Street ramp, but there's a walkway. That one isn't 25 feet wide, but there's a walkway on the first floor that allows you to go between the 2. This is anywhere in the city. So, yes, a mid-block connection, we agree, they provided a mid-block connection. Then there's number 2, which talks about development between Lake Street and the shoreline, and that is to require a significant massing break to provide views. They're arguing that 1 can be number 2. Can we go to the design standard or the design guideline we have to help illustrate what the intent, it's slide, 31. We have this image that states Lake Minnetonka, views of the lake. So this is an image of what that intention is. They're arguing they could use something else. If we look at the image to the left, and they showed it too, when you are a human being, when you have a view, you look up and you look down, you look at a range. They're basically providing you, like you're looking through binoculars. They're limiting what is naturally the human view, where the image from the design guideline matches the human view, that you have a range. It's not just looking down, you're looking up too. So we feel they're interpreting the code differently than we're interpreting the code. We feel the code says that that should be open the entire height of the building.
And I would
And
also,
again, this is only where there's views. So we agree with the applicant that between cores 1 and 2, and then between cores 4 and 5, and between cores 5 and 6, there is no view. So they don't have to implement that image that has it all the way through. But when there is a view of the lake, it's the way the human eye sees.
could I make a comment?
Absolutely.
I would suggest, however, that the other areas between 4 and 5 and beyond may not have a view from street level, but they certainly would have a view from across the street on floor 2. It doesn't say in point 2 there that must provide a lake view at street level.
The handbook does, and we've updated the code to match the handbook.
Okay.
And then in addition, cores A4 and between A4 and A5, and between cores A5 and A6, you have Grove Lane behind it. So kind of regardless of how high you look, you're going to see Grove Lane. You're not going to see the lake.
Chair, if
Yes,
I,
sir.
yeah, if I could just interject, I appreciate the discussion that we've had about these differing interpretations. Tonight, my advice to you is to apply staff's interpretation. This is the city's position on this, and so you need to make your analysis and recommendation based on that. The applicant is free to differ with the city on that, and there's a forum and a process for them to pursue that further if they want. But I would say for tonight, you want to apply the standard that staff has articulated.
Thank you.
All in all, the building is huge, it is massive, but it's also gorgeous. It's quite an improvement over what's there now. There are a lot of very positive things, and if we could somehow, developer and us, come to agreement that just those 2 have to be 3 stories tall in order to provide a lake view, I think that would be a wonderful solution, because we've waited a long time to get this finalized. It's definitely a development that needs to happen, and I don't know what else would look all that much more gorgeous there. Actually, it's quite pretty. But a break there, especially because I happen to look at it oftentimes from the lake, we need something to really break up that building. And we need a 3-story break in those 2 spots, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
I'll follow up on that. I agree with that. There are a few things that come to mind. A building this length, one facade from end to end, doesn't really fit with new buildings. Point one, a facade that responds to the small-scale character of Wayzata doesn't meet that, in my opinion, without those masking breaks. It says a masking break should be a minimum width of 25 feet located above the ground floor. Well, above for 10 feet, or above as far as the eye can see. I tend to agree with the planner that people don't just look at the, whatever your 97-degree radius was. We look everywhere. If I'm standing back, I want to see it all. I tend to also agree that the sidewalks, there will be no sun breaking through that building in the winter, and certainly will not be getting to the sidewalks, bringing light into what will become almost cavernous for a very long stretch, over 2 blocks. So I think that the staff is correct in that those massing breaks between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 are required. I think that would bring this in line with achieving the response to the small character of Wayzata. I agree. Those 2 should be. I think it's a reasonable compromise, because I would almost suggest, like the other developer, they should all be all the way through, all 5 of them, because it doesn't matter where you're standing, you're looking all around. You're not just looking straight ahead. And it's not just about the view of the lake, it's the view of the sky, it's getting sun through, things of that nature. So I think would be a reasonable compromise.
Planner Quarles, can you shoot us forward to questions to consider? And I want to start. I think we've been talking a lot about design deviation here, but we've got a number of different questions we have to answer tonight around. So I want to start with the PUD concept and general plans, and start with discussion around. Or we can start with the zoning amendment. I want to start with the PUD zoning amendment. And just so let's kind of lead off with discussion around this portion of it, right? And just kind of work our way through I think we've got this piece, we've got the concept general plan, we've got the 2 shoreland pieces, and then we've got the design deviations. And so all, just kind of talk through them and get your thoughts on them and see if we're can come to some sort of consensus on each of them. Sure.
When we do review PUDs, which I'm glad we're looking at that for this particular project, I think it was needed. We do need to consider that well-planned PUDs can attract investment, new residents. Both of those, I was taking some notes, contribute to the growth and the vitality of the community, as the applicant mentioned. So I do think this project meets the requirements for the PUD zoning district amendment. It's compliant with the comp plan, meets the performance standards in height, setbacks, open spaces, and public spaces.
Commissioner Planton, can you move your mic a little closer?
Oh, sure. There we go. It conforms to future and present land uses, but I do have a concern that the potential negative of this is the surrounding, the lakeside facade. The building appears as one long continuous building, and it's really from our community's most valuable asset. We've invested a lot into our playground, our beach, and our marina, and without those massing breaks, It's tough, and I would have loved to have seen the attention of detail that was put on the front on Lake Street to the back. It's one of the, coming into the city, we have people coming to the restaurants and to spend time there. It would have just been lovely to have that attention to detail to the back. For the concept PUD, I don't know if there's any other, people have any other questions on
I have a
Yeah.
the zoning amendment?
I just have
Severson.
a, I just, well, and maybe Attorney Shelzel, you can tell me if this is the right time to do this, but I did have a question about the back of the building, because my understanding is that it's in compliance. So is that something that we even can consider?
Chair and Commissioner, I'm happy to answer that, and staff may also want to chime in. I think the back of the building is compliant with the design standards that are applicable to the building. Whether the building meets other criteria that fall into a PUD, for example, as Commissioner Planton was speaking to, I think that's for you to weigh and consider. But in terms of meeting the design standards, it's my understanding that the staff's design review of it was that the back was compliant, perhaps apart from the two
Massing
deviations.
breaks, yeah.
The massing breaks, yeah, the trees wouldn't apply to the back, but the massing break would.
Okay.
And I think maybe to tie it out a little bit, right? Think about like small town, we talk about charming, right? We talk about character. And I think maybe the back of that building, when viewed from the lake, right, in its entirety, kind of lacks some of that, right? Like, and that's really kind of in some of that comprehensive plan stuff where we're talking about, right, like, where are we going and what do we want to do? And I think that's maybe some of that, not to take umbrage with it, right, but it's a giant building, especially when viewed from the lake. I think Commissioner Algai and Commissioner Planton, I agree with you on the front. I think, it would be the ground to sky massing breaks really would be more of a portal, and I think that would probably help break some of that up from the front and the back. And give it, I think, a little more of that charm rather than make it feel like just big city.
I also like the covered idea in some of those cases,
Some of them
because I
remain.
do agree that from a weather standpoint, so if there's a way to like take those stories off and just have like a covered area, I do like that idea. It's a very long, that's very creative, I think, very considerate of, people who walk along. That's a long building, so 2 blocks worth, and you can pop in there and have some opportunity to engage with the public. So I do like that aspect of it quite a bit. It's just been that height all the way up somehow like really makes an impact. So I don't know how you kind of marry those two together.
Zoning amendment, anyone else?
I agree with what's been said.
We do.
Okay. Concept plan, which I think I think concept plan, general plan are going to be fairly similar here. General plan is going to have a little bit of higher level of standard, right? Because the concept plan is really the concept and the general plan is next level down. But thoughts here?
I think it hits all the points. I don't have any, I think it hits all the points here. It's creative, high standards, beautiful design. The only thing that it is large, but that's what is. It's going to be large. And it definitely will make that end of town a more desirable place to be and to walk and to spend time. So I think it hits all those.
Thank you.
I would agree with Commissioner Schwalbe. It's a creative use of land with mixed use versus the strict application that we might have if it was, in that's traditional zoning and not a PUD. I do feel it's in harmony with the comp plan. It does exceed the common open space and public space requirements. I'd even argue it supports and encourages inclusion of shared amenities like pocket parks and open spaces. I think those are quite nice.
I love the creative use of the land. I think that, it's, I think they did a really nice job of maximizing the footprint of what they've got. So I really love that part of it.
Agreed.
Keep rolling.
General plan, all right, moving on. Anyone want to have any thoughts on the general plan comments? Detrimental effects, Commissioner Van Looy, I heard you talk a little bit about north side, sun shadow, especially in the wintertime, ice.
Yeah.
Dogs.
It's crazy. It's very treacherous. If I was in your shoes and you could handle the operating costs, I would probably heat that sidewalk. But that's not for me to say. But I would agree with what's been talked about, and I think that outside of that one piece, in general, this is a very thoughtful, gorgeous view. I do think that the considerations around the massing breaks are fall in line in terms of the proposed structure as it lays out in point 3.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I agree.
Agree. All right. SIP, CUP, and so this is really around stormwater, right? This is the shoreland zone piece.
If I read this correctly, they're doing a great job, especially in comparison to what's there today and the runoff that's happening. And I think there's a lot of work, if I read it correctly, to capture and make sure that they're taking care of the stormwater and whatnot. So even with the additional coverage, I think that they have a plan that the city looked at and decided it was more than adequate.
Yeah, I didn't feel like any concerns were raised about it at all, so. And I think it's very in line with everything else that's down there, in terms of lot coverage, and, I mean, Lake Street's got a lot of hardscape, right?
Yep.
That's how it is. And I do agree, right, we should do our best to be stewards of the resource that we have in the lake, and I think we're doing a really good job of that, so. Anyone else? All right. Design deviations. We're going to start with the massing breaks.
We've really covered
We've covered this one a lot, right? Anyone else, any other thoughts that they haven't shared yet on massing breaks? All right. Moving on. Then the last one was tree spacing. When Cody was talking a little bit about it, I think I appreciated their approach with what they were doing, and I think that it's much better not to have trees down on that west end than try to put something in there, because inevitably somebody will run into it with a bike, or a dog on a leash will go around the wrong way, right? Or, something will happen. So I think it becomes more of a hazard than it does a benefit to the city and the populace at that point.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and given that there is such a tight space between the sidewalk and the building, but I think it's more than made up for by the two parks on the opposite ends and the other trees that they have on the property, so I would rather not have a line of trees right along that sidewalk there. We bike and we walk dogs and we do all of that. It just, I think would.
Frankly, I mean, as the other developer in the public hearing talked about, it could get shrunk down in order to make room. I'm not sure that is something that we need to ask them for with all of the other concessions, I would be fine with this deviation, given all of the rest of the green space work that was done associated with this.
Well, so to that end, they're not asking for a setback deviation, are they?
No, they're not.
All right, question for staff. How do we want to handle this as like one whole recommendation? I'm sensing that maybe we've got some things that we agree with, some things we don't. Do we want to try to knock them off one by one? What's the best way to approach this?
Chair, I'd like you to end up with a motion that covers the entire application. On your way to that, if you don't feel you have consensus about what the commission has shared on each one of these, I think you could spend some more time talking about that. I think from staff's perspective, I don't want to speak for the rest of staff, but I think I heard the most concern around the design deviation for the massing break. And in general, there was articulation of criteria being met with most of the others, if not all, although I did hear some concerns that went to the first request. So maybe probing the commission more on that, and you can handle it all in one motion. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay.
So I have a question to that. So could we approve with taking out the massing breaks? Or is that a big enough concern that you would recommend we deny based on that? So let's say, for example, if that's how we ended up tonight, what would you recommend?
Chair and Commissioner, that's a really good question. In one sense, the way that the applicant handled the massing breaks for which they need the deviation is baked into the concept plan and the PUD general plan. But I also think, your job is to make a recommendation to council. And I think council would be well served if you were to point out to them, yeah, we like this concept and general plan. We think it meets the criteria and standards of approval with the exception of this deviation that they've requested. We don't think that the negative impacts of that deviation are outweighed by the positive aspects or criteria in that part of the code. So, I'll defer to the rest of the staff, but my sense is that it would be good to, if that was the scenario where you were going, recommend approval of those if the plans were modified to be compliant on the massing
with
break.
conditions.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And it kind of feels like that's.
So
where
we could
Did somebody
recommend
write that down?
approval with the exception for denial of the deviation, massing break deviation request.
I think it would be like a conditions that we would want them to go back and fix that part of it. Is that right, or?
Yeah, I think that captures the
Excluding
spirit of it. We would refine that in your draft report and recommendation and bring back staff's recommendation on how best to articulate that. But I think you could draft or direct staff to work on that report and recommendation for consideration at your next meeting. If that's the primary issue, and again, we don't want to preclude you on anything that was discussed if someone wants to offer a different perspective. But if that's the issue, and everything else seems to be meets the standards, we would prepare the report to that effect.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the only issue that I see is those massing breaks. Everything else is lovely. It's a beautiful plan. I'm just so excited about it. I can't wait for there to be something safer and something more exciting and to draw people west. And so I want to commend the work that you've done. You've clearly put a lot of thought into it. You clearly care about this community, so thank you very much for that. So that would be my only concern. Everything else is awesome.
Agreed.
Bonnie?
But to be clear, we're only talking about 2 of those massing breaks becoming 3-story, complete breaks.
We can put whatever we want in there, I think.
You want all 5?
No, I'm saying that we're just recommending the denial of that variance.
Oh, as opposed to saying,
Deviation.
I'm ready to make a motion.
It's a design deviation. What, sorry, what, you ready, you
Are
ready to
we
go?
ready?
All
Well,
right.
yeah, so I think that's an interesting point from Bonnie. Is it for the two of them, or is
Well,
it
well,
for all
well,
5 of them?
Well, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
And we can discuss it and you
Okay,
can
okay.
alter it if
Can you tell us what you're going to make ahead of time?
yeah, let's have it.
I'm going to make a motion, much as written here, reflecting a recommendation of approval for review and adoption, excluding the massing break design deviation between A2 and 3 and A3 and 4.
So you're okay with the other 3, you're not okay with those 2?
Correct.
I like it. Sorry.
Did I hear a second?
Second.
It almost
Any
sounded,
discussion?
Do you want me to say it again, though?
Well, Chair and Commissioner, I guess I would offer a friendly amendment that your recommendation of approval of the PUD concept plan, general plan of rezoning is conditional on that particular aspect of the plans and the proposed amendment being, becoming compliant. So in other words, you're not recommending approval of a general plan with a deviation that you don't think should happen.
That's the conditional component of it,
Right,
yes.
right. And so that would be the one proviso I would suggest to that motion if you and your second would approve that.
I'm in agreement with that, and I'm not going to restate it. We've heard it, and
Commissioner Schwelbe, are you as well?
Yes. Shall I still second then?
You did second it, and I think
Second.
and you agree with that. And now, Chair, you can
Yeah, no, so for
discuss that at length.
So for clarity, really what we're talking about is we're going to recommend approval, a conditional approval of the PUD agenda, general plan, concept plan, sorry, not agenda, amendment, wrong A, with the condition of the void massing break between A2, A3, and A3, A4 get revisited.
Except he wants a more general statement of that it be
Yeah, Chair,
compliant.
I guess
That it be
what I would say
compliant.
is that the massing breaks become compliant. So they're requesting 2 deviations.
It's the
Okay.
same thing.
So I think, if
With the condition that
staff
the
would need
massing
to
breaks
find that
become
they have,
compliant.
yeah, their design now complies with the design standards for those 2 gaps.
complies with the design standards, yes.
Okay.
Are we good with that? Sounds like we have a consensus?
I'm curious-
Question mark?
I'm good.
I'm curious if anyone wants to do all 5 massing breaks.
No. You like the cover.
No, I just want to make sure because, just want to make sure.
I don't think we
No,
have,
this is good.
I don't think we have grounds to do, even though it would be entertaining, I don't think we have grounds.
No, and yeah, the city's interpretation of it when they were walking through it, where the 3 of them were compliant, 2 of them weren't. And it's those 2 that are non-compliant that are.
Lake views.
And it's
the top.
because they had the specific late
Lake
fees.
Yes.
Got it, okay.
Yep.
I want to make sure I'm clear.
The only way the only way I would understand it, that you could consider all 5 is that you consider any lack of break would be not consistent with the small town character. I personally think that just the 2 breaks actually is a nice middle ground between a very large building and one that will give the appearance of 3 buildings.
Yep.
I would like to not dictate where they are or how many they aren't compliant, and there may be some creative way that they want to come back and address that situation or work with council on it. I mean, council's going to watch this and take our, the minutes and review it and take our suggestions of the 2 that we think should happen, but I don't think, to dictate where those happen. We can do a recommendation, but I'd hate to say it has to be those 2.
Right, just that it becomes compliant.
I agree.
But aren't those the 2 that are out of compliance? So if they changed it to 2 other ones, then there would be 2 out of compliance and 2.
Like a major redesign.
Couldn't you argue that it's not following the comprehensive plan with the charm when it's that long of a building? So you could, instead, they'd be independent units all the way through. I would argue that's more charming, small-town charm.
So then should we amend the motion? Because the motion is between the two very specific ones.
Well, I thought we
No, we
changed it to
removed
just
that.
making it compliant.
Just making it
Okay,
compliant. Yep.
Okay.
That was the motion.
I missed that then, okay.
Commissioner Ankeny brought up a good point about, that's a broader piece, right?
Yes, and Chair and Commissioner, I would say that concern goes more to the PUD itself.
For sure.
And is the PUD compliant with the comprehensive plan?
Yep.
Which calls out small town charm and a lot of other things. So I think, from a design standard perspective, I'm not sure that would come into play. But from the legislative decision you have on whether or not to recommend approval of the PUD.
That's the district amendment, general plan, concept plan.
Yep, the
piece right
PUD,
there.
yep.
Yeah. So if you want to bring that into play, we can, right? That would be a separate motion.
It would be a different motion, Chair. So right now you have a motion on the table that you're discussing, and
Should we vote on it?
you could either call the question on that and vote on it, and that, if it passes, that would be the end. Or you could, commissioners could decide to withdraw that motion and entertain a different one.
So the
I
motion
would
on
like to
the motion on the table is approval with condition of getting massing brakes into compliance.
Which are the two specific ones?
Nope.
No.
Massing brakes in
And
compliance.
okay.
Well, for clarity, Commissioners, the staff has identified 2 massing brakes that are not in compliance.
Val, can you pop to that? Sorry, Planner Quarles, can you pop to that picture? So the 2 in red are the 2 that the city has said are not in compliance. And what we're saying is, with our motion, we are saying that we would want all of their massing brakes to be in compliance. And so as designed today, the city's saying those 3 in black are fully compliant.
Yes.
And so it really then, the condition is get the other 2 into compliance.
Yep. Correct.
Other three.
2.
The 2.
These 2, the red ones. The black ones are in compliance.
Yes.
So it ends up being the two.
It ends up being those two?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Without identifying them, but those
Got it,
those are the
yes,
2.
but those are the
Yes.
two specific ones that
Yeah.
were, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was
sorry.
late,
Yeah, we're
but
just done. Yeah.
All right, should we vote on this?
Yes.
And so if we, if we approve this as presented, right, as what we've, with the condition, right, we're done and moving forward. If you want to, if you disagree with that, then
But no.
vote no, right? And I'm not saying one way or the other, right? That's no means, I'm just trying to make sure we're all clear, right? So,
And Chair, a couple of procedural things I'd recommend. I think it's probably worth a roll call vote.
okay.
And maybe even giving a commissioner to explain their rationale of their vote, if they, want to at the end. And then we can go from there, depending on how the vote goes.
Let's just start with a roll call vote. How's that sound?
Okay.
I'm going to just start right down here. Commissioner Van Looy. Sorry to put you on the spot first.
That's okay, I'm over it. I approve the, as indicated.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Commissioner Hug.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Schwalbe.
Aye.
Commissioner Plantain.
Aye.
Commissioner Ankeny.
Aye.
Commissioner Cameron. Aye. Ayes have it, and the motion passes.
All right.
The draft report and recommendation will be on the consent agenda at our next meeting, and after adoption, will go on to City Council for their consideration. Thank you to the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time this evening, to the public for coming out, and for your participation in this meeting.
Do you have to hit that?
Nope.
Okay, good.
That concludes the public hearing portion of our meeting. Next on the agenda is other items. Director Sharp, is that you? Or is that Planner Quarles?
I'm actually going to defer to yet another planner's waiver on the development
Planner's
update.
waiver.
Thank you. I'll give people a second.
Yeah, let's just give him a minute or 2 to clear out of the room. Hey, folks, can I, we need to finish up our meeting here, so can I have you take your conversations out into the vestibule? Thank you.
Okay. For the development activity that you can see out in the community, we've talked about Wells Fargo is moving along. The residential building, the garage is, all the structure of the garage is there now. We'll see the residential building coming up. You may have noticed the equipment, kind of kitty corner here at 150 Broadway. They have about half the foundation down now, so we should see some of those walls moving up here again pretty soon. Updates of things that either we've deemed complete and are scheduling for public hearings, or activities we've given discussions of in the past. We're still working with the Carishes on that former Caribou spot to issue that building permit. That hasn't happened yet, but we're still working with them. Next Planning Commission meeting will be April 7th, and we will have a communications tower for Excel's substation up at 701 Central. And then we just today deemed the retreat, so that's the 1221 Wayzata Boulevard East, in the middle of the big woods, essentially. They are removing a wing and reconstructing it, but their conditional use permit requires that is a conditional use permit amendment. And then they are asking for the rooftop mechanical design deviation because of their location. But that requirement is there. They just need to request a deviation.
So that's next meeting, April 7th?
That would be the 21st.
21st, okay. Cool. Anything else?
Would this be a time for me to tell you I won't be here on April 7th?
You can remind us. You had previously told us that you
Oh,
were
good.
on April.
Okay,
7th,
good.
But thank you for the reminder.
I was curious if there's been any news on the marijuana distributor.
We have been getting, we've gotten inquiries from 2 different people.
Okay.
But they're in the position now of trying to actually find a space to lease.
Okay.
So we're getting inquiries.
All right. This is not on the agenda, but before I ask for adjournment, since we've concluded our portions, I did want to take a moment and publicly recognize Planner Quarles, Val, for your contributions to the city and for all the work that you've done on our behalf. Thank you so much. And I know I haven't been here long. Some of these other people have been here way longer than I have. But it's truly been a pleasure working with you. I wish you the very best of luck in St. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Much appreciated. You guys are a great group to work with.
I think you started around the same time I joined. So I will miss you very much. I've loved getting to work with you, so thank you for your service. And St. Paul is getting a great planner.
For sure. So I just wanted to do that before we close, so that could be on public record.
Yes.
Once everybody left.
We're all here still.
The people who matter are all here.
Right. All right. Anything else? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion?
No.
All in favor? What?
You said any further discussion, we said no.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, the motion passes, and the March 24th, 2025 Wayzata Planning Commission meeting is adjourned.